So I'm Mark Barrera from TrustRadius, and we're talking to people who have used TrustRadius to buy business software to learn more about the ups and downs of the buying experience. So we're just looking for your honest feedback, as I've told you, about your usage of TrustRadius and the software purchasing process in general. So first question, can you just briefly describe your role in your company?
Sure. I am a consultant at a consultancy. We're about 25 people, and I would say 90% of us are consultants. Because we are pretty much all consultants, the way I would use TrustRadius is, as a small company, we're looking to bring on certain softwares and certain capabilities. And so each of us sort of plays a unique, we all contribute to, for any given functionality or any given capability, we all chip in to try and evaluate or throughout the evaluation process for different softwares and services.
Perfect. And how long have you been using TrustRadius for software purchasing decisions?
Probably about 2 years.
Okay. And then what would you say is the size of a typical buying committee when making these decisions? And it sounds like it's going to vary by business, but just kind of curious.
Yeah, at my current company, no more than 5 people. At bigger companies I've been at, certainly more than 5 people.
Perfect. And can you describe how you use TrustRadius in your process?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, I think we use TrustRadius at various points in a evaluation or buying process. I think first things first is to supplement whatever we can learn from the company's website themselves. Or I would use TrustRadius to understand, hey, is my understanding aligned with what other people are saying? We certainly use it during the evaluation process in terms of customer reviews or customer feedback. If any pricing information is available, we certainly use that. And then any videos as well. I think, as a small startup, we want to understand sort of the ins and outs and the functionalities of things, not just sort of functionality as text, but functionality as videos. What does it really look like? Those are the different ways that I think I particularly use it throughout the buying process.
Perfect. And then would you say you're using TrustRadius for discovery of products or more comparison of things that you have already identified, or what pieces of that purchase decision process do you?
Yeah, it's a little bit more in the for comparative purposes and deep dive purposes. I think in the business in which I am, so it's healthcare consulting. A lot of myself and colleagues both have set products that we're very familiar with, or we have familiarity with. Let me put it that way. We may not be super familiar, and so I think we already have an idea of which products we want to evaluate, and then that's where we would use TrustRadius to complement what we know or what we don't know.
Perfect. And then can you describe a time when information from TrustRadius directly influenced a purchase decision?
Yeah, I think I'm thinking of a product we purchased fairly recently within the last 6 to 9 months. And, I think what we wanted to understand was for the day-to-day user, what is their experience like? And so we were happily surprised that there were, if I recall correctly, 18 different user reviews, all of which were fairly recent. And the elements that they touched on in their reviews were elements that were really interesting to us. And so we were happy to see that there was value from users in other industries and how they use the product. Because I think that was the big question for us, was these things sound great, but in reality, are they great? And I think, the consensus from the reviews was that, yes, these are very valuable. Here's how they impact our business. And ultimately that, informed our decision to purchase the product.
Awesome. And then as far as, when you're looking at this information on TrustRadius, what pieces matter to you the most? Do you look at the scores of the products? Are you looking for just any content? Does depth of content matter? What really is most valuable to you?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, ideally, pricing is a huge one. And I say that because pricing, if you can know pricing information up front, that's that's fantastic. Right? You don't want to go down the path and realize at the end, hey, this doesn't make sense for our business pricing wise. So I think pricing is huge. Ratings to a certain extent, I am personally don't put a ton of weight onto ratings, and I would say that the last thing which is really helpful are the user reviews or customer reviews. The more in depth they are, the better. I think it's very different to say I enjoy this product and I enjoy this product. Here are the elements I enjoy. Here's how I use it. Here's how it adds value. So all this to say, I think pricing, information that's available, in-depth user reviews, and then any type of videos that videos are also just generally helpful as well.
Awesome. And then TrustRadius also does feature awards that we give out to different products in different categories. Does that matter to you? Do those play into it, or are those kind of just skipped over, or do you have any view on those at all?
Are those I don't know how to pronounce it, class or KLAS? Is that what that is? Or it's something different?
No. So we have top rated awards, which kind of looks at, in a category who's received the best feedback and quantity of that. We have other awards like our best of, which looks at features and scores those. It sounds like these aren't standing out in your mind
No, candidly, they're not.
Okay, so probably not playing much part in the decision process, but that
for myself, yeah, that's correct.
Okay, perfect. And then how would you say TrustRadius compares to other software review sites you've used, or if you've used others at all?
So if I was thinking about this before the call, I have used others. And of course, off the top of my head, I'm forgetting what they are. But the short answer is yes, I've used others. I think TrustRadius, I think it's very streamlined and simple to use. I think sometimes there can be too much, not on TrustRadius. I think on other platforms, there can be almost too much information. And I think when you are in I said I like to use these platforms for comparative purposes. So where there are a lot of different things to compare, I kind of want it to be short and sweet and simple to understand. So I do like the way TrustRadius is set up.
Awesome. Appreciate that. Are there certain features that are more valuable? I think you touched on this a little bit, but just want to pry a little bit more, such as use cases, alternatives. You've mentioned pricing. Anything else that you really look for, integrations or other things that really help in that decision process too?
Integrations for sure. I'll answer your question. I'm not sure if I'm going to answer this exact question, but one thing that I think would be really helpful or could be really helpful is to stratify or to understand customer reviews based on industry. So, within and not that every industry is mutually exclusive. I work in healthcare and I work in consulting. I work in both. But in a world in which I can understand how are other consultancies using this, how are other healthcare companies using this, and I say that because obviously every industry has some nuances, and so being able to understand, hey, here's how similar companies to mine use this software could be very, very helpful.
Awesome, appreciate that. And along those lines, any other things about TrustRadius you feel could be improved, better support your software purchasing decisions, or other features or content that you would like to see added to TrustRadius?
Obviously, I don't know what you require from companies on your site, but in a world in which there was required pricing information, that would be helpful, or even the ways in which they might do pricing. Another one, this is like a real world example right now. It's taken us a while to understand whether or not we can get a free trial. So things like that, I think, could be really useful. Free trial eligible, yes or no, right? And I think that one's probably lower hanging fruit than what is your pricing model. Not everyone wants to share that. So
totally.
Anything around free trials could be useful.
Yeah, awesome. And along those lines, just to make you aware, we're definitely leaning into pricing and trying to get that. To your point, it's hard to require them, but we're doing two things. One, trying to source that on our own. Also, pulling quotes from the reviews. Anytime we see people talking about how much they spend, they may not give the exact number, but at least to illustrate an ROI on the spend if they think it's worth it or not. So definitely leaning into that, and actually to make you aware, sounds like you're familiar with our videos, but we are also adding interactive demos as well as some free trials via test box. We're wanting to make that available on our site. So things that we're leaning into, to your point, we hear others saying exactly what you're saying and are trying to capitalize on that and make sure we bring that content into our site.
Awesome.
So how would you say using TrustRadius has impacted your overall satisfaction in making software purchases?
I think it improves it a bit, and I say that because I think in a world in which I don't use TrustRadius, I probably go through the necessary steps and motions to understand all that I can understand, and so I probably I collect all the information I possibly can. I think TrustRadius is there to supplement what I'm learning. So I would say it does improve it. Is it a 180-degree turn and it makes everything that much better? Probably not, but it does improve it a bit. Yeah.
Okay. And then along those lines, when making software decisions, what other places do you go to discover or decide on software? What are the other sources of information that help you in the
I think
process?
the easy one is Google software name reviews, right? I think YouTube certainly has obviously video elements of that. Someone might say, "Hey, here's my experience." Again, it's blanking on me. There are similar companies to TrustRadius that I will leverage as well. But again, I would say, Google and YouTube are so quick and easy. Obviously, their fundamental purpose is not that of TrustRadius's, but they're so broad that they have similar components. So those are two that come to mind.
Perfect. And then putting TrustRadius aside, are there any trends that you see, good or bad, in software purchasing that you like or you don't like, or things you see vendors doing that don't make sense to you, or anything else you kind of see just in general about purchasing software these days?
One thing that comes to mind, this is a little bit more on services than software, but they certainly overlap. Um, when reaching out to companies, when actually engaging companies for sort of information and getting collateral, then sharing that collateral with colleagues who are not on those calls, who are less familiar, but we need their buy-in. I find that information to be oftentimes very, very high level and forcing myself and others to want more. It's a bit of a, it's not ideal. I think ultimately we're looking for more specificity, and I say this like across the board. I think more specificity is good. I think too specific is not good. Too high level is not good. There has to be like a good balance. And in my experience, I find that collateral during the buying process is too high level. In order to get specificity, you have to get on the phone once, twice, three times, four times, and it's very time consuming. And so I do think that there's probably a world in which collateral is just better. It is more informative, and hopefully that actually shrinks the buying cycle because we're getting the information sooner. We're getting the right information sooner.
Awesome. And then kind of to that point, on the software purchasing side, less on the services, what's your level of leveraging vendor information or engaging with their sales team? And what are your thoughts on that?
Um, I view it as, it's funny, thinking about a project I've done in the past, sort of on this topic. I view it as pretty much necessary in any given instance engaging the sales team. I personally have not experienced a situation in which everything is pretty seamless and technological. You don't really need to talk to anyone or talk to a chatbot. So in my experience, talking to a live human on the other end at the vendor is 10 out of 10 times it's what we do. And what I would add to that, and I alluded to this, is 10 out of 10 times we're talking to them multiple times. Not necessarily because we're interested, or seriously interested, but in large part because we need more information. We're not getting the information that we want either from collateral or from a first phone call.
Awesome. And then we talked a little bit earlier about information sources. Do you leverage analyst reports or these 2x2 grids that layer products on those, or what's your thought on those in the marketplace?
I do, and I take those with a grain of salt. I think sometimes they can be very. A 2x2 grid is inherently simplified, and so I look at that. I see the comparisons. I think I see where things weigh out in respect to one another. But ultimately, that is a. I don't think that informs our decisions. Put it that way.
Awesome. Okay, perfect. Well, those are all the questions, unless there's anything else you'd like to let me know, either about how you use TrustRadius or anything about the buying process.
I think that's everything on my end.
Perfect.